Good morning. I'm Dr. Petra. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. Welcome to those of you who are in the room. And we're happy to be together. We are on the general summary here on page 407. And this morning we're going to do a little skipping around paragraphs because, ooh man, he gets a little esoteric in this area. I'm not sure I can 100% explain what he's talking about. And truthfully, I'm not 100% sure I agree with him. And this is the lovely thing that we get to do, is we don't have to agree with everything that we read in the Science Mind. We can try it on, we can see if it makes sense to us, and most importantly, we can see whether or not we can apply it in some way that is meaningful. So we're on page 407. We've been going through this summary that's a lot of theory. So right in the middle of page 407 is this lovely statement. We have arrived at the conclusion that spirit, or the mind of God, which, as you know, I'm translating into consciousness. We have arrived at the conclusion that spirit or consciousness is all causation. That spirit or consciousness is also all effect. Cause and effect are but two ends of one unity. The physical end is visible, the spiritual invisible, and the spiritual may be inwardly perceived and outwardly experienced. Right? So we never, ever, 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 ever want to forget that we're speaking of a wholeness that has various ways in which we can talk about it. Right? So one example is the idea that our planet is, 75% covered in water. And the oceans actually are all connected. It's all one gigantic body of water. But we label it the Atlantic, and we label it the Pacific, and we label it the Indian Ocean, so that we can designate what aspect or area of the ocean we're talking about. And there are some places where you can, in fact, see a little bit of difference. You can see as we go into the Gulf of Mexico, the color of the water changes, especially the closer you get to the beach, right? And so the idea of naming or labeling aspects of it has really nothing to do with separation. It has everything to do with being able to engage with the various aspects of this infinite reality. Otherwise, literally, we're just standing here talking about one, and it's all a unity, so why bother talking about anything? And talking about it helps us understand a little bit and begin engaging. So when we say cause and effect, or we say the spiritual and the physical, right, we're simply accessing the idea that the oneness shows up intangibly and tangibly, and that we're not trying to bridge the gap between the two. They are already connected. It's already one whole. One is simply, insubstantial, and the other is substantial. Now, we have lots and lots and lots of evidence. This is not something that should be difficult for us to bend our mind around. We have lots of evidence of other things that work this way. So take the radio. Radio waves, utterly insubstantial. You can't see them, but you can experience them once they've been received by a radio station, and what comes out of your radio is sound. Something that is tangibly hearable, but right now there's radio waves going through all of this. We could think about our wireless internet connections, right? It's completely intangible as it's moving. We can't see it or sense it or feel it with our five senses. But the moment that there's a receptive apparatus, then all of a sudden we're connected to the internet. We can go all the way to the idea of energy and matter equals mc squared, right? Equal sign means they're the same, that both sides match. And so we can talk about matter being energy slowed down into a form that we can see, or energy is simply matter speeded up. till it becomes insubstantial, till we can't see it. We can talk about water. Water vapor, before it becomes clouds or rain, is not visible to us. And yet you can have a humidity reading, tells us that there's water vapor in the air, but we can't actually see it. And it's only when it coalesces into clouds and begins to rain or fog, or, right, there's a coalescing of it, that we can actually see something that is already there intangibly, insubstantially. And so we don't want to make this harder than it is. We don't want to say, oh, this is not something this is very esoteric, that there's no, that's a paradox and we can't really understand it, and how does that really work? We have lots of evidence. Ultimately, we can go to the quantum field, right? And the quantum field, they used to talk about the idea that things either acted like a wave or they acted like a particle, as if somehow those two things were different, and that the wave like magically became a particle, like something entirely different than it was before. And in all the work that they've done and all the experimenting that they've done, they now no longer say that. They now call it a wave particle. That's one word. And what they're accessing is that the same thing sometimes acts like a wave, which is what's happening in the quantum field, which is essentially unavailable to us in our normal state, and until it coalesces into a particular particle. But it's the same thing. It's a continuum. And that particle is winking into existence and then winking back out of existence to the wave function, and in and out, right? But it's a continuum. It's not like it's jumping over here as if it were something separate. So at every level of our physicality, we're having this same experience. You can look at the ocean and the waves. Sometimes you go to the ocean and it looks still like a lake, doesn't it? Like, what happened to all the waves? Where did they go? So you just need a little wind and a little storm, and all of a sudden you have waves, and you have huge waves, and the ocean is filling those waves completely, and then those waves can go away again. So we have lots and lots of ways to show ourselves how cause and effect are two sides of the same coin. Humidity and rain are two sides of the same coin. Energy and matter are two sides of the same coin. They're utterly unseparatable, which means it's all one thing. But each side of it, so to speak, we can describe differently. Energy and matter we describe differently. Energy moves, matter sits here. Well, it's moving, but if it were moving so much like energy, we wouldn't be able to sit on it. So just like radio waves and the sound that comes out of the radio, right? We can talk about the radio wave and whether it's a good signal or a bad signal. But when we talk about the sound that comes out, what are we talking about? We like the music, we don't like the music. It's as if they were two entirely different things, but they're not. Excuse me. And so the same thing is true about cause and effect. So cause and effect are two sides of the same coin. They cannot be separated. You can't have a cause without an effect. You can't have an effect without the cause. What we want to remember is that causality is directional. Cause is the reason for an effect. It's the cause is the cause of an effect. You're not allowed to define a word by using the word, right? You have to use a different word. And so if we see an effect, we can postulate a cause. If we work with a cause, we can assume an effect, because they're two sides of the same coin, and they are utterly unseparable. When we talk about the effect, what we recognize is that the effect is always somehow an expression, an experience, a tangible something, the outpicturing of an intangible cause, and by itself is never causal unless or until we make it so. We are the ones who then allow effects to become causes. There are conditions and circumstances in our life which we then take on as if they were the intangible cause, when if they're an effect, they're never causal. This is such a critical point that we have to understand when we are doing our spiritual work. This has nothing to do with whether or not we're compassionate for the human experience, right? Of course we are. We're compassionate to ourselves and to others. And it's critical that we don't forget that part. But when we're thinking about how life unfolds, right, we want to be compassionate to our experiences, but we don't want to make them causal. We want to recognize that they are an effect of causes. And what we're going to do in the work, the spiritual work, is we are going to set new causes in motion. So if we go over to page 408, the middle of our, let's see, the fourth paragraph, the third full paragraph. Our consciousness of God, or of the One, is our real self, and at the same time it is both personal and impersonal. It is personal in that it is personified through us, and it is impersonal in that we are using a universal power. When we know that we are using such a power, all doubt as to our ability to use it will vanish, and our words will be spoken with spontaneous reliance on truth. See, the point is, this is always happening. It's always happening whether we know it or not. We are always setting causes in motion. Whether we're taking outward effects like the economy or the trauma of our childhood or systemic racism or any of these things, whether we're making that effect cause in our own lives, or whether we're saying, I am going to be cause in my own life, and I'm going to produce a different effect. This is constantly the work that we're doing, whether it's an outer experience or an inner experience. Of course, when we're talking about systemic racism, we have to shift the whole consciousness. We have to have lots of people saying, no, I'm setting a new cause in motion, right? Which is why we start with our own lives. We learn that it's possible, we learn that we can do it, and then we begin to apply it to larger and larger and larger issues in which we are shifting collective consciousness. It is personal in that it is personified through us. Are we showing up as love? Are we showing up as joy? Are we being causal and experiencing that presence and aligning ourselves with it? And it is impersonal in that we are using this power. We are using a universal power, which is simply consciously engaging in the law of cause and effect. It's not like, oh, now I'm spiritual, now I'm enlightened, now there is a power accessible to me that wasn't accessible to me before. No, it's always accessible, and we're actually always using it. The problem is we're not using it consciously. We're not engaging with it thoughtfully. We're not deciding what causes we're putting into motion. We're allowing the conditions of our life to be the things that we talk about, think about, obsess about, worry about, fear about, and we're continually allowing then the effects and conditions to become causal in our own lives. Now, is this work easy? No. This is the discipline. Right? This is the discipline of our spiritual work. There is not one thing that is, well, I don't want to say it's not, I don't want to affirm that it's always hard, but it is a discipline, and we have to learn how to discipline what we're paying attention to, what causes we're setting in motion. Right? Now remember, our spiritual work is done in the absolute. This has nothing to do with how we engage with ourselves and people we love on the human aspect of compassion and care. And if we or someone else are already experiencing an effect of some sort, we have to be a compassionate place for that. The question is, are we continuing to hold that in consciousness as the cause of what's happening next, what's coming next, right? These two things, again, are not mutually exclusive. The absolute spiritual work we're doing is like sending out the radio waves. The compassionate experience of the human condition is like listening to the music that comes out of the radio. Do you see? So again, we want to be a little nuanced and try not to oversimplify these things, and to grow in our capacity to hold this whole in our own minds, in our own consciousness, and navigate between the ways in which we are showing up in the world. Okay. Absolute and relative, cause and condition, right? These are why these words are so important, and how we want to embrace the understanding of the whole thing. So we're going to stop there. It's very interesting things to talk about on a Sunday morning. Wherever you are, it might be a little early. So I hope you have your cup of coffee and you're following along. So this is an opportunity for us to then see what thoughts and comments you have, how you are applying this in your life, how you might be struggling with it in your own life, so that we can share a little bit about it. So we're going to turn it over to Ryan, check in with Ryan, and see what's going on out there and what's going on right in here. Come.
Well, good morning, and I guess we can also say what's going on inside of us, too.
Yep, absolutely.
Another perspective. Wow, that's why I'm here. Not only am I the good looks that you never get to see, but I am also here for comedy relief. So, welcome everybody here in the room. I know I can't see you because I'm sitting here behind a pole, so the people in the room can't see me, actually. And welcome to everybody online joining us. Those who are watching us here in the Zoom room, hello. And those who are watching us on Facebook Live, hello. So yes, this is an interactive discussion. So for the people in the room, what we do is we have you raise your hand. So check both of your arms today, make sure that they're working right. Okay. And for those who are on Zoom, we kind of do the same thing. You hit the raise your hand button down on the bottom of your screen. Why don't everybody here in the Zoom room hit the button just to make sure that it's working okay?
And we'll wave back. Hi.
Oh, we're waving back. Hey, can you guys see my hand? No, I'm just kidding. I see a few of you doing it, so great. Now that we know that button is working, wonderful. And for the folks that are joining us here on Facebook Live, make sure to check in and tell us where you're watching us from. We're all over the world right now. It's so great to see people within the United States and outside of the United States who are watching us. So check in. Let us know that you're here. And this goes for whenever you see this broadcast, too. We love to see that as well. So, I guess we'll kick it off. Does anybody here in the room have a comment or question?
Yep, we have
and then
one
we can
right
move over to the
Uh-huh.
Zoom. Oh, by the way, I totally forgot the most important person. The iconic Richard is here with us today, helping us, and he'll be delivering the microphone to the folks here in the room. And, so go ahead and just remember to say your name when you speak.
Good morning. My name's John.
Good morning, John.
And my question is around creating abundance and not having the reality that I see in the world color my ability to really be a receiver and a transmitter of abundance. I work in real estate, and I see these massive new apartment complexes going up. And it's like houses are not a thing anymore. And I really feel from my 10 nieces and nephews who are millennials just starting out in the world. And the fact that the idea of home ownership for them is like an impossibility. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. I just am having trouble grappling with factoring reality into my still being cause over my creation of abundance.
Great. Great. So thanks, John. Thanks for sharing that, because I know that you're not the only one who has this. So let's parse, first of all, a couple of words. First of all, the belief that something is impossible for your nieces and nephews, right? That belief itself is now causal. So you are causing impossibility for your nieces and nephews. So we have to ask ourselves, is that really what we want? Right? So our job is to find all the exceptions. And if there's even one exception, then it being impossible is actually not true. And so what we do is our brains are designed to look for the negative, because our brains are designed to keep us safe and to manage threat. So what we do is we show ourselves things that are threatening, and then we globalize it as if it's an ironclad thing, right? If you can find even one exception, then the word impossible is not accurate, right? So we're going to show ourselves that of course there are lots of millennials that are buying homes or condos or sharing homes, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is the assumption that home ownership is a requirement for a happy, healthy life. In Europe, they don't buy homes. They buy flats. They don't have single family dwellings. My cousin lives with her mother and with her one of her grown children and Julien's husband. So they have a 3-generational household. They think nothing of it. The parents actually moved out of their house, built the mother-in-law building behind it. They moved in. They moved the mother upstairs, and the kids live downstairs. And it works brilliantly, right? So we have a particular idea of home ownership, which then becomes causal. If I can't do that, there's something wrong. If I can't do it that way, there's something wrong. If I can't do it, that means that the economy or my life is terrible. So that's the second fallacy. The third fallacy is my causal nature and reality. As if the conditions of our lives are real and the causal nature is like, well, we're not so sure. Right? Do you see? And we do this. This is where we see what parts of life we think are part of the whole and what parts aren't. For many people, it's money and or health. Well, the doctor said, so that's what's real. So we can be all la-di-da about our spirituality, but that's real. The same thing about our abundance. This is causal, but that's real. And this reality is nothing more than the effect of causes. Now, some of those causes are in fact not of our making, right? Corporate greed and the way the pandemic has shifted our economy and all kinds of things are in fact creating this larger experience. But the reality is, because we are causal, we don't have to make that condition causal to us. Thomas Troward calls this raising ourselves above the law of averages, right? The law of averages is how life manages creation. That's why oak trees have so many acorns. First of all, a boatload of them are for food. Second of all, a boatload of them just fall on ground that is not conducive to a new oak tree growing. And in the lifetime of an oak tree, of making thousands and thousands of acorns, really only needs 1 or 2 to ground to get into the ground and start growing so that that oak tree, when it dies, is replaced. That's the level of causation at the macrocosmic level. And the universe does not have an opinion which acorn replaces that oak over the lifetime of an oak tree, right? Do you see? So this is called the law of averages. And when we are not aware that we are causal, then we're subject to, that's all statistics are, the law of averages, right? Which is why young men up until the 25 pay ridiculous insurance. Why? Because the law of averages says if they're not consciously careful about driving, they're going to have way more accidents than everybody else. That's right. That's what statistics are. When we understand what's going on, do you see, we can now consciously use causal reality. And the way that Trower describes this is to raise ourselves out of the law of averages, right? This is the very gift of the Christian tradition, the teachings of Jesus, the value of the individual, and the individual being able to speak their word. This is what self-awareness means and what becoming conscious and raising our consciousness means. We're raising ourselves out of the law of averages and saying we are now co-creating. So I'm going to set a new cause in motion that says my nieces and nephews absolutely have the abundance of their lives in whatever way they choose. May include home ownership, may not. They might decide to get 4 friends together and buy a house together. They might decide to buy a tiny house. They might decide to live in a van, not as a homeless person, but as a choice. They might decide to buy a mansion. They might, right? But when we raise ourselves into the level of cause, we're no longer subject to statistics. Now, that's the work. Because what happens is every time we look out into the world, we say, oh, that's reality. Do I believe my cause? Oh, that's reality. Do I believe my cause? Right? And so while we're compassionate for people's growth, and if you want to buy a mansion, you actually have to make money, so you have to do something, right? There's a whole host of things that go along with that. Am I willing to stand in my place of cause, not denying the experience, but not making the experience causal? Just because that is what statistically is happening does not mean I or my family or quite frankly anybody needs to be caught in that. It's all in, and every individual, we can all collectively raise ourselves above the law of averages. Actually, what we'll do then is we'll create a new law of averages. And when we are living in that place of causality and we have developed a prosperity consciousness, we are doing exactly that. Our law of averages, everybody gets raised. And so one of the things that we have to remember is that prosperity and abundance looks different to everybody. And it's not getting worse, it's actually getting better. The level of poverty in the world in the last 10 years has been cut by 75%. World poverty. That is an extraordinary statistic. That is humanity raising itself out of the law of averages into everything being raised out of that sense of purely survival, barely surviving. On a global level, we are doing great. So the question is then how we define prosperity, how we describe abundance. Is homeownership the only box there is to check about that? What kind of a life do we want to have? And right, and so John, going back to your question or your comment, right? We get to ask the people in our lives, are they feeling that way, or are we just the ones who have an opinion that if they can't buy a house, that's a terrible thing? Or do we see that each and every one of them actually can put that cause in motion, and they may have to work for it, but that isn't necessarily out of their reach either. So this is the double vision, right? We have to see the condition as what it is, an effect of causes. Some of those causes are conscious, some of those causes are unconscious, Some of those causes are individual. Some of those causes are like a collective consciousness of either a culture or a nation or a group of people or humanity as a whole, right? And so are we going to participate on the causal side, or are we going to simply bemoan the condition and say, well, this is the way it is, isn't this horrible, and oh my God, it's terrible, and it's always going to be this way? Well, now we have allowed that condition to become causal, and we're actually holding it in place. It's always going to be this way. Nothing has ever changed. Nothing. It's not any different. It's always going to be this way, right? We are holding that in condition in place now. Does this mean we can't be compassionate or have our feelings about the condition? Of course we can. Absolutely. We have our feeling about the experience, and then we go over to the causal realm and we say, and this does not have to be the way it is for a particular individual or for a collective group of people, right? This is the work. So this is why we separate cause and effect, so we can see them differently, but they're two sides of the same coin. This is a great question, John. It's a great example. And of course, it's one of the reasons why we often use like money and things as examples, because it's tangible, right? It's a tangible, we can really like parse it out so we can really see it. This doesn't mean we aren't causal about things like inner peace and joy and love and well-being and all of those kinds of things. It's just that, yeah, sometimes the tangible things are, a little easier to talk about. Thank you. Thanks, John. All right. I'm coming back to Ryan.
Yeah, so I'd like to open it up to the folks here on the Zoom room. Just go ahead and hit the raise your hand icon, and we can pull somebody in from there. Would anybody like to talk? We'll just give it a second, so in that way people can find the button there. I know they're listening to us, but sometimes they get a little slow before.
That's all right.
They get
Or
to the
maybe
button.
somebody will write something in the chat that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have befuddled
Our
audience.
I know. These are the places where the rubber meets the road, right? And it requires us to be, what should we say? Thoughtful, careful.
I would say causal.
Causal, but we have to
Causal.
be conscious about it.
Yeah, but
Right?
but you are conscious about it when you're using intention. Like, I look at it this way. Okay, so when I went to go and buy a car, I saw this car that was good for an everyday commute. Right? Very decent, dependable, reliable. But then I was online and I saw this cool drop top Mustang, and I was like, you know what? I would have a lot of fun in that car. And I called the place and they didn't answer. So I was on my way to go and buy the dependable, reliable car. And all of a sudden I got a phone call, right? The person with the Mustang said, yeah, we have it available. It's right here. Come down and check it out. And in that moment, I was very intentional because I was thinking about what is the experience that I want to choose to have. Do I want to be dependable and reliable, which is great? Or do I want to have the top drop down and a booming sound system in the middle of summer? And at that moment, I envisioned myself in that space, and I said, you know what? I haven't had that space before. Why not try it? Right? And I think that's being conscious and causal in the moment, because I think at some sub-level, everybody can understand. Doesn't mean that they make a choice about it, but they understand that they're in their own thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's good.
Well, and sorry, I keep stealing the spotlight here.
No, it's all good.
But
You're
we
not
do
stealing
have
anything.
a question, so go
Good.
ahead and with your thought, and then I'll come back to this question.
That's all right. Go ahead and say the question. Go for it.
Well, it kind of marries into what I just said.
Uh-huh.
But the question is, how can I manifest a happy, healthy marriage?
You know, it's always the challenge when we are confronted with the fact that we are not solely causal in our own lives. How you manifest a happy, healthy marriage is that you become causal in your own life. And the happy, healthy marriage has to evolve around you. What we can't do is try to be causal in someone else's life. I am going to be causal so that you will be different. I'm going to be causal so that you will meet my needs or change or, right? So there's so much, so that was 3 sentences. I started all at the same time. So relationship, marriage and relationship, that's like graduate school spirituality. And because we are engaged with someone else who is being causal, consciously or unconsciously, in their own life. So there's my life and that person's life, and then this third thing called our marriage. So I will tell you that I spent many years doing my spiritual work about relationships that weren't working. And I finally had to admit that all of my causal work was really about trying to fix the other person and about them being different. And if they would be different, then I would have a healthy, happy marriage. Went to counseling, personal counseling, went to marriage counseling, all of that, because you do have to work at a lot of different levels, right? And so, so finally, I thought, well, this is not right. Because I am not doing I'm not being causal in my own life. I'm still directing the work that I'm doing at the condition of an unhappy or unhealthy relationship. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I was focused on that instead of focused on being causal. And so I began doing work about being in a healthy relationship. And I didn't give any form to it. This person or not this person, this relationship or not this relationship, because I'd already done that for 20 years. And so the focus is on I am causal, I am in a healthy, happy relationship. And so the first thing that happened is I had is all kinds of awarenesses about myself. Damn. Oh, I'm still doing that. Oh, I'm still doing that. Oh, I'm still doing that. Right? All the places in which I personally was contributing to it not working. And really focusing on this is my experience. And that, Ryan said something really important. We focus on form. We too often focus on form, overly focus on form. It's about the qualities and experiences that we want to have, right? So I spent an enormous amount of time on working in my own consciousness. Do I even know what a healthy, happy relationship looks like? How will I know if I have one? What does it feel like? What does it seem like, right? Because I had wildly terrible mental equivalents from my childhood, from my family. Equally bad from movies and television, right? And all the romance novels and Disney that I watched, none of which actually was portraying reality as it could be in a healthy relationship. Because I really believe that if I was really in a happy, healthy relationship, we'd never fight, we'd never argue, we would always agree, everything would be wonderful, we would be in love all the time, it would be fabulous. Well, of course, if you have been in a long-term relationship, you know that that's nonsense, right? Because we're all learning and growing, and life is constantly unfolding and changing. So I did my work around a happy, healthy relationship. Now, I was perfectly happy for it to be the person I was with. I was also okay with it if it wasn't going to be the person I was with. And the upshot of it was my relationship ended, and I decided, I don't want to say I decided, I felt like, great, this is great. I don't ever need another relationship. I'm good. I'm good. That was the result of my work. I'm good. I don't need to do that anymore. And of course, what happened? My soulmate dropped in. It's like, oh wait, I was not expecting you. Where did you come from? Oh, no. It's pretty funny. But do you see, that had, all of that work ultimately had nothing to do with the other person. Nothing, right? And I continue to do that work. And I continue to do that work with my wife, and we continue to grow, and we continue to do our own work, and we continue to do this beautiful work called What is a Healthy, Happy Relationship, a Healthy, Happy Marriage, right? And it's really extraordinary, because I'm no longer about making everybody else wrong, about fixing them, about needing them to be different. I'm learning to speak up for myself, ask for what I want, allow another person to be themselves and different, support them unconditionally while not giving myself away, right? All of those things are things that I have to learn. I'm learning how to make boundaries and how to, well, I guess it's all a whole host of things. But do you see, they all have to do with me. They don't actually have to do with the other person. That's being causal. Right? Now, this doesn't mean that we're not asking for what we need or want, of course, but I had to learn how to do that. Now, I'm an accommodator. I acquiesce to other people. I don't even spend time thinking about what I want, because I want to make sure the other person is happy, right? I learned that directly from my mother, and I've spent the last 8 years unraveling that. Do you see? So healthy, happy relationship is no different than the economy, than the weather, than everything else. The work is here. And if I can give anybody one piece of advice to begin, to get started, start with gratitude. Start with gratitude. What are you grateful for in your marriage? What are you grateful for about this other person? What do they bring to the table that is so amazing? Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Now, if you are in an abusive relationship, get out. That's the growth that needs to be had. But beyond that, you will learn if you stay and you will learn if you don't. Start with gratitude. That is the doorway to you finding happiness in any relationship, any job, any situation. Start with gratitude. That gratitude is one of the most causal things that we can do. All right, fabulous question. Thank you so much. Causes and conditions is a really powerful thing. If you are interested in going deeper with this, I highly recommend the work in the Edinburgh Lectures by Thomas Troward, the first 5 chapters. He has a whole chapter on causes and conditions. And if you'll work your way through, we do teach classes on this. It's amazing. It shifts everything in our spiritual work when we can really understand this. So I do want, sorry, Ryan, did you have something out there before we close?
Yeah, I actually wanted to throw this out here
Good.
too, because it's now available. Dr. Petra has an e-course that's called Manifestation and Mysticism, which is really great. If you go to our website, CSLDallas.org, and you click on the Education tab, you'll see e-courses right there. Just click on that, and you can take that right now, which is a really fabulous course if you want to take a look further into this whole process. Yeah, it's very
Beautiful.
interesting.
Yay.
So just want to throw it out there for anybody who's looking.
Good. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for that. Also, we want to let you know that Reverend Karen has canceled her Prosperity Workshop for this afternoon. If you've signed up for it or were thinking about signing up for it, she's had to cancel it. She has, she was in an experience where a bee's nest was activated, and she got a series of stings on her cheek and a series of stings on her nose. It's not good. It was not good. It's definitely getting better. But she is still under the weather of, almost 20 bee stings on her face. And so please hold her in your consciousness cause of effortless, easy healing. I mean, she's definitely getting better, but, that was a lot of stings. It happened very, very late this last week. I can't remember now, Thursday or Friday. And so she is definitely still recovering. So unfortunately, the workshop had to be canceled. It'll actually be postponed till the fall. She's bummed. We're bummed. I'm sorry that if you will be receiving a refund if you have already signed up for it. I know lots of people were really looking forward to it, and so is Reverend Karen. And so, yeah, whoo, man, right? Life happens. Life is always in session. And so then the question is, what do we do with the condition? Are we going to be causal about it? I'm going to heal quickly. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to know all of this works out for good. Or do we then implode under the condition? This is always, where we're at with it. All right, so we'll see you in our celebration in 30 minutes. We are talking about prosperity and gems, the gems of our lives. And so I invite you to join me. And Ryan?
Well, and speaking about that too, I also want to let you know, in alignment, if you are now free of some time, Reverend Karen does have a e-course as well, which is a prosperity workshop. So 2 of them. So you can also look for that on our education e-course tab as well.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there.
Yes, and they're brilliant. So if you wanted to take the workshop and are not able to, that's a great go. She's got 2 really brilliant prosperity e-courses out there. Thanks, Ryan, for saying that. I really appreciate that. So there you go. Lots of exciting and good things going on. We are actually having a cool spring day today here in Dallas. We're really grateful for that after already having been in summer. So I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are. We'll see you soon online or in person. We'll see you when we see you. Bye for now.